There's a moment in Happy Ending where everything you thought this season was building toward just shifts, not in a loud, explosive way. Though, yeah, there's plenty of that, but in this quiet, gut punch kind of way that creeps up on you after the episode ends and you're just sitting there staring at the credits. That feeling? That's Eric Kripke doing what he does best. He's not just telling a story about superheroes and corruption. He's asking you something deeply uncomfortable. What happens to a person when violence is the only language they've ever been taught to speak? And that question is at the absolute heart of episode 3. Let me be real with you. This episode doesn't feel like a midpoint. It feels like a thesis statement. Like Kripke sat down in the writer's room and said, okay, we've been circling this idea for 4 seasons. Let's just say it out loud. The cycle of violence isn't just a theme in The Boys. At this point, it is the show. Every character arc, every relationship, every power struggle traces back to it. Someone was hurt. They hurt someone else. That someone else becomes the next monster. Rinse, repeat, until the whole world is bleeding and nobody can remember who threw the first punch. What's brilliant, and what I think a lot of people are going to miss on first watch, is that this episode isn't just showing us the cycle. It's showing us 3 completely different ways people respond to it, through Ryan, Maverick, and Zoe. And each of them is basically a different possible future for what trauma does to his soul. Ryan is the one that keeps me up at night, honestly. Because Ryan isn't evil. He was never evil. He's a kid who lost everything. His mother, his sense of self, any chance at a normal life. And he got swallowed whole by Homelander before he ever had the chance to figure out who he actually was. What we're watching with Ryan this season isn't a villain origin story in the traditional sense. It's something sadder and more realistic than that. It's a boy who was handed a blueprint for how to be a man, and that blueprint was built entirely out of rage, dominance, and the idea that power means never having to feel afraid again. He didn't choose Homelander's world. Homelander's world chose him. And now, in episode 3, you can see Ryan teetering on this edge, and the terrifying thing is that part of him knows it. There are these flickers of the kid he used to be, the one who just wanted his mom and a quiet life, and they collide with this conditioned need to be what Homelander made him. Watching that internal war play out is genuinely one of the most emotionally complex things this show has ever done. Maverick, on the other hand, and this is where I think Kripke is being really deliberate, Maverick represents the path of full surrender. The point where someone stops fighting the cycle and just becomes it. There's no more internal conflict for Maverick. The wrestling match with his own conscience is over, and the darkness won, and what's left is someone who's not even really experiencing his own life anymore. He's just executing a program. And that's the scariest version of this story, because Maverick isn't some cartoon villain. He's what Ryan could become if those last few flickers of humanity go out entirely. Kripke puts these 2 characters in conversation with each other, sometimes literally, sometimes just through parallel editing. And the effect is this creeping dread, like watching someone walk toward a cliff and being powerless to stop them. But then there's Zoe. Zoe is where Kripke does something genuinely unexpected, and I want to spend some time here because I think this is the real emotional core of the episode, the thing that gives it its title. When Eric Kripke talks about the happy ending, he's not talking about sunshine and redemption and everyone hugging it out. He's being almost brutally honest about what a happy ending actually looks like for someone who survived the kind of violence and psychological destruction that this world inflicts. For Zoe, the happy ending is getting out. It's escaping the gravity of the cycle before it pulls her all the way down. It's the moment she chooses, consciously, painfully at real cost, not to become what was done to her. And here's the thing that hit me hardest about how this is framed. Zoe's escape isn't triumphant. It's not a superhero moment. It's messy, and it's uncertain, and there's grief woven all through it. Because leaving the cycle means leaving behind people and things, and maybe even a version of yourself that you loved. Real survivors know this feeling. You can't just walk away clean. The weight comes with you. But you can choose to stop adding to it. You can choose not to pass it on. And in the world of The Boys, where almost every single character is trapped in an endless loop of inflicting and receiving pain, That choice, that tiny, agonizing human choice, is as close to heroic as it gets. What Kripke is essentially arguing through this episode is that breaking the cycle is the hardest thing a person can do. Revenge is easy. Retaliation is instinctive. Passing pain forward requires almost no effort at all, because trauma is gravity. It pulls everything toward its center. Choosing not to, despite every emotional and psychological force working against you, that's the work. That's the quiet, invisible, devastating work that nobody makes movies about because it doesn't look like anything from the outside. But inside, it's everything. Now here's where I want to go a little off script, because there's a theory I've been sitting with since this episode ended. Ryan's arc this season feels like it's being set up as a mirror to this entire debate. The show is essentially asking, is Ryan past the point of choosing? Has Homelander already completed the programming? Or is there still enough of the original Ryan left to make Zoe's choice? Because if Ryan does get a moment of reckoning, and I think he will probably in the back half of the season, it's going to be framed exactly around this question. Not can he defeat the villain, but can he refuse to become one? And the tragic, devastating possibility that Kripke seems to be leaving on the table is that for some people, by the time they even understand the choice exists, it's already too late. The cycle has already completed itself through them. That's not nihilism, though. It's something more complicated. It's an honest reckoning with the fact that not everyone gets saved. Not everyone finds their way out. And sometimes the most powerful statement a story can make isn't love conquers all, but this is what happens when nobody intervenes in time. Generational trauma doesn't fix itself. It has to be interrupted actively, consciously, at enormous personal cost. And sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it just keeps going. The Boys has never been afraid to look at that reality directly. And episode 3 is maybe the clearest articulation of that philosophy the show has ever produced. There's also something quietly shattering about the way this episode maps onto things happening in the actual world. And I don't want to get too heavy with it, but it's there. The idea that violence perpetuates itself in families, in communities, in nations, isn't just a TV theme. It's something we watch play out in real time, constantly. Conflict that started generations ago, that nobody alive today started, but everyone alive today is still fighting. The cycle is real. The Boys just dresses it in capes and laser eyes and makes it impossible to look away from, which is honestly the point. Satire works best when the truth underneath it is undeniable. And that's what happy ending is doing in the end. It's not giving you a happy ending. It's defining what one would even look like in a world this broken, and then showing you how impossibly rare and fragile and hard one that actually is. Zoe's choice isn't a victory lap. It's a survival. It's a beginning, not an ending. And Ryan and Maverick loom over it like shadows, reminders of every road not taken, every intervention that came too late or not at all. I keep coming back to how the episode closes, that feeling of stillness after all the chaos, like the show taking a breath. And I think that's intentional. Kripke wants you to sit in it. He wants you to feel the weight of what it costs to step out of the cycle and the weight of what it costs when you can't. He wants you to walk away from this episode not energized, but thoughtful. A little sadder, maybe, a little more aware of how the things we survive shape us, and how much courage it actually takes, real, quiet, unglamorous courage, to refuse to let the worst things that happen to you become the worst things you do to others. That's the happy ending. Not joy, just a choice, just a refusal, just that.